Thanks for your company. The details now. The CSO Coalition working against corruption is demanding the suspension of the entire board of the Public Procurement Authority pending investigations from the Office of the Special Prosecutor and Commission on Human Rights and Administrative Justice (SHRAJ), commending President Akufo-Addo for swift suspension of the authority CEO, Mr. Ejenim Boateng-Ejay, indicted in Manasseh Azuri-Awuni's contract for sale expose. The CSOs also called for suspension of the use of restricted tendering and single source processes while investigations are underway. Among the coalition, or the demands the coalition are making, the Ghana Integrity Initiative, GII, Media Foundation for West Africa, the Center for Democratic Development, Ghana Anti-Corruption Coalition, Amnesty International, Citizens Movement Against Corruption, and the Africa Center for International Law Accountability. These are all the organizations part of that CSO. But what do we know about the PPA board and its members? Well, let me run you through that, and I am joined in studio by JoyNews editor Fred Smith to give us the names of these board members and their roles. So Fred, the coalition of CSOs against corruption say the suspension of the CEO is not enough. We want the board members to also be suspended. Who are these board members?
Well, the board is a 9-member board chaired by Professor Douglas Boateng. I give the background of Professor Boateng. He is the Africa's first ever appointed professor extraordinaire for supply and value chain management, and he's also an international professional certified chartered director and an adjunct academic. He's independently recognized as one of the vertical specific global strategic thinkers on procurement, governance, logistics, and industrial engineering in the context of supply and value chain management. He continues to play leading academic and industrial roles in supply chain strategy, strategy development and implementation, both in Africa and around the world. So he comes with a lot of experience in the area of procurement and supply chain management. The other members of this board are Mr. Samuel Ni Beidu. He is vice chairman. We also have Mr. Ejenim Boateng, who is the CEO, and as a result also a member of this board. We have Honorable Godfred Dame, who is a member. Godfred Dame is a deputy attorney general in Ghana, and he's supposed to bring legal expertise to the entire team. We have Mrs. Ernestina Swatson-Ishen and also Mrs. Stella Williams. The other members are Madam Patricia Safo, she's MD for JCS Investments, Dr. Emmanuel Yabuache, and Mr. Francis Kofi Busu. All of these have something to do with procurement and supply chain management.
Thank you very much. JoyNews editor Fred Smith, they're giving us details of people who constitute the board of the Public Procurement Authority, even as the CSOs Coalition working against corruption demand their suspension as well. Well, the Ghana Institute of Procurement and Supply says a disciplinary process has been activated against the suspended chief executive of the authority as per their code of conduct. Speaking to JoyNews after an emergency meeting to decide his fate, President of the Institute, Collins Agyemang-Sarpong, called on the Auditor General SHRAJ and the Special Prosecutor to extend their investigations into all contracts issued over the years by restricted tendering and single source method.
The person in question is a senior member of the Institute. So during the meeting, there was the need for us to come out what is going to be done. So at the meeting, it's been agreed that we have to activate our disciplinary process, which is going to be done, and also call on all the investigative bodies, the SHRAJ, the OSP, and all the investigative bodies to go further to investigate. And one other thing that is very classic is most of the infractions that do come out in the public is in relation to restricted tendering and single source procurement. where we think that they need to go further, not only this, so that some of these infractions and this negative news about procurement practice in the country can be curtailed or kept or removed. So we mentioned that. And also, there's something that is going on which we think that we do not have license as practitioners like other professionals. So we think that the absence of that license for people to practice gives room for anybody practicing procurement to do it anyhow, because at the end of the day, they are not answerable to anybody. So we called on the president to also hear us and help us come up with an act, a practicing act, to regulate the members that are practicing procurement and also governing body, so that it will be a professional body where people will now hold license to practice. If you breach anything, the license can be taken away from you.
Now, a member of the Ethics and Legal Committee of GIPS, Kwamna Mensah, disclosed they've always suspected breaches in the procurement process at the authority, but they didn't expect to see it at this magnitude captured in the documentary.
Did you see this coming as an institute?
Should I say not in this dramatic fashion, especially for one we describe as a leading light in our profession, to be caught in such an unfortunate incident. But it is something we know that in the practice of procurement, such abuses do happen. But to have the foremost gatekeeper in procurement being found guilty, being found to engage in things that do not readily, sit well as far as the procedures and the guidelines are concerned, it is quite a problem for us. But like I said, it is something that we know happens in public procurement, and it is the reason the president alluded to the fact that we are asking the president to extend investigations into all matters of restricted tendering and single sourcing where we think most of the abuses happen.
So you spoke about that earlier. You want what has made this system so porous to allow for some of these infractions, and how are we going to cure that?
With the single source and the restricted tendering methods, they are supposed to be the exceptions in terms of the processes of doing acquisitions or engaging in buying. But what we are witnessing is rather they are becoming the default processes that are being used. The Procurement Authority has gone further to even publish guidelines on how entities could submit their applications in order to obtain approval from the authority. In the case of the restricted tendering, we have a situation where the two underpinning principles of economy and efficiency that will enable an entity obtain approval from the authority are the only things that you need to demonstrate when you are submitting an application. All other factors are the discretion of the approving authority, and these are methods that are subject to the approval of the procurement authority. So we are of the considered opinion that in such issues, Section 2 of the Act enjoins us to carry out procurement in an open, transparent, fair manner. And at the end of the day, the bottom line we intend to achieve is value for money. So what you do in order to underscore these principles that I've mentioned in Section 2 is for you to publish the guidelines. The guidelines is what...
So you are calling for publication?
Of the guidelines.
Of the guidelines.
Yes, and that is what is going to deepen the transparency we're talking about, is going to deepen the fairness we are talking about, is going to deepen the non-discrimination that we are talking about.
Now, the Institute says it will within 14 days drag the suspended CEO to the Ethics and Professional Committee to answer questions on allegations of corruption and conflict of interest exposed in the Contracts for Sale documentary.
Our constitution is very clear about that. They also have their mandate, the various institutions. But our constitution is very clear. We invite him personally, that is Mr. Barton, and then we'll take it from him. He has a right to come with a legal representation and then appear before the committee. And then we'll take him through, and then we'll come out with the conclusion.
Is he compelled to appear before the committee?
Yes, by the membership, by the constitution. We'll give him 14 days, and he's compelled to come, or a lawyer, for that matter, can represent him, or he can do a write-up, whatever we want to do. The meeting will be in camera. The constitution states so. So he's compelled to come. If not, sanctions follow.
How soon should we expect this appearance?
The appearance will give him the mandate, the mandatory 14 days to appear.